Welcome back to Closet Star Wars Freak. In this episode, we're going to be restoring an old beater Farm Boy Luke, or Luke Skywalker, from the 1977 Kinder line into something a little bit more appealing. Now, when I initially started doing this video, I was planning on doing what I did with my Bespin Luke and my Yoda, which is basically take an old, beat up, defaced Bespin Luke and kind of restore him back to what he looked like when he, when fresh out of the package, restoring him. Same thing with the Yoda. But in the process, I did come across this guy who's actually pristine. He looks great. And so instead of having two identical type figures, or restoring this beater to something that's actually kind of looking pretty darn good, I will probably just go ahead and do a custom instead. I'll kind of show you briefly all the steps that I took, washing them up and getting them prepped up for the restoration figure. But instead, we'll go ahead and just customize them. I know a lot of people think that this is not acceptable. I don't think like that. I think that's kind of missing the point as to what gives these things value. You want to have a figure that's authentic, untouched, that looks as close as possible to what they look like when they were on the shelves. Is to evoke that feeling that you got as a kid when you went to the Toys R Us or the Child World and saw the wall of those figures, and that sort of aha moment, or that sort of surge of excitement that rose up in you. A figure like this is not going to invoke those feelings. They have no value. There's no kid that's actually going to be impressed by a Luke that looks like this. And so it doesn't have value. It's not that this figure on its own, a 1977 Farm Boy Luke, no matter what, unequivocally will have tremendous value. I don't agree with that. This thing is pretty much valueless, and I got it really cheap. He's just an old beater. Something like this has more value, and it's all authentic. I guess the important thing is you don't want to turn around and sell these as originals when they're not. But I mean, anybody would be able to tell. I'm actually going to customize this. I'm going to probably paint him, give him blue eyes. Going to try to make him look a little bit different. Going to customize him. All right, the first step is to de-yellow him. The basic idea here is to just submerge the figure in hydrogen peroxide and put him out in the sun. You want to cut off any oxygen. I had it in a plastic bag, but I switched to a little plastic container. Kind of help keep him submerged a little bit easier, and you can see it's on top of a mirror. That was something I got from someone on YouTube, which is basically it kind of helps bounce that light back up and kind of get the back side as well as the front. You can see the back side is just a little bit more yellow, but it doesn't really matter because I'm just going to gesso him. Gesso is a material that oil painters will use to prep up their canvas before painting on it. I'm using it here to help with the acrylic paint, to help keep the acrylic from chipping off of the original paint on the original figure, and also kind of using that gesso working in between the arm joints, especially because this figure is very floppy, and that gesso is going to give it a little more traction. It's going to help out with the posability. You can see he's really flimsy. He's got limited posability. We're gonna change that. Here he is, all prepped up and ready for paint. He's looking pretty good. When working on paint application, I'll have to stress the importance of having some sort of magnification, a jeweler's loupe, something like that. The magnification will be extremely important in doing detailed work like face painting and borders in general. But instead of me showing you a bunch of tedious footage of me painting the figure, I think this would be a good time to tell you a story about this figure and what it means to me, and why it's so cool that I finally have one, now two. Growing up, the first figures that I had were the Hoth Rebel and X-Wing Luke. Here, Han fills in. I remember how I didn't like the faces of those figures, especially the eyes. They reminded me of Woodstock from the Peanuts. Comma-like. Squinty. I definitely preferred the Cantina creatures. Interesting and eclectic. But one figure that I never had, one that I've always wanted, and one that always eluded me, was the farm boy Luke. I specifically remember feeling like he was a little out of reach, or I wasn't entitled to that figure. He seemed to belong to the other kids in class, the privileged, the rich, the white kids perhaps, the ones that fit in. He was the golden child, and he wasn't for me. What a strange feeling, what a strange thing for a kid to think, isn't it? Welcome to the mindset of an immigrant son. Okay, enough story time. I think that figure is probably about done by now. Let's go check it out. All right, just in time. Putting on the final touches just now. Hey, this guy's looking pretty good. Let's check him out. Looks like we got a black a lightsaber there with a red and green light. And we'll talk a little bit more about that lightsaber in a second. Looking good. Get the silver belt buckle. There's the blue eyes and the beauty mark. We got ourselves a beautiful Luke. No more beat up Luke. The painting is looking a little rough. We're going to put a final varnish or a linseed oil, a stand oil, protect it, give it more of a gloss. And how about the posability? Let's see if the gesso did its job. Looking pretty good. 360 degree of posability. All right, let's talk a little bit about that lightsaber. All I did was take some yellow Play-Doh, rolled out a nice thin roll of it, and went ahead and just fed it right through the hand. I know right now it's flimsy, floppy, but when it hardens up, it'll be nice. You just have to take into account shrinkage. When it hardens up, it shrinks a little bit, and it's a little brittle. You just get it to the right length and just pinch it off in the end, and your final product will look a little something like this. All right, I just finished applying a thin layer of stand oil on my figure. There's other options, but I chose that. The important thing is to apply very conservatively. This stuff is kind of gummy, but you can see how it's added a nice little sheen, and all that rough, those little rough areas are sort of smoothed out. Everything's just sort of coalesced. Has a nice glossy look to it. No more rough spots on the face. Looks really good. And we got one last pose from good-looking Luke. His lightsaber is a little short, so I'm currently working on a backup in case I need to replace it. And one last look at the before and after. I hope you enjoyed my restorative custom of the classic 1977 Luke Skywalker figure. Thanks for joining, and see you next time.